The following is a production of Texas Lutheran University. For more information, please visit tlu.edu.
Welcome to the first biology seminar for the spring semester. We'd like to welcome back Dr. Jonas. For those of you who don't know Dr. Jonas, well, most of you do, but if you're a freshman and you haven't seen him around because he wasn't here last semester, Dr. Jonas is one of the senior biology faculty here on campus.
Really senior.
And he teaches a variety of courses, but they do include microbiology and biochemistry, and so you will see him around from time to time, and you'll see him at the seminars. And so we wanted to welcome him back, and he's going to present on what he did last semester while he was away.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. Appreciate that. I'm going to turn the lights down, so you could go to sleep, I suppose, but try to stay awake. We'll try to keep this going. So how many of you are Downton Abbey fans? Anybody watch Downton Abbey? A few people, yeah. So this is kind of like, imagine living in Downton Abbey. So this is kind of, this is where we live. This is Harlaxton Manor. And so this is a program run by the University of Evansville in Evansville, Indiana. And so they send a lot of students over here. It's all American students living in this place and a bunch of us faculty. So we all live together, and I'll show you some pictures of the manor and where we live. And so that's the situation that we're in. We have students from not only Evansville, but also the partner schools, and TLU is one of the partner schools, of course. So I was fortunate enough to go as a representative of TLU and stayed in this wonderful place. This is my wife. She went with me, so you'll see some pictures of her as we go through this. And if anybody has questions or anything along the way, feel free to stop me. I have kind of a flow chart up here, what we're going to cover. But we're going to start off talking about the manor and what happens there. And then I'll go into a little bit of teaching in the manor. It's a little bit different from the usual. And then we'll talk about some travel opportunities, so places I went especially. And then, of course, if anyone, some of my colleagues that were there are here also, so stop me if you have anything to add. So we'll continue on. This is the back side of the manor. So that was the front, this is the back. It has a conservatory, we'll see some pictures of that. Our room was this room right here. So that was where we lived. And this is the room. So this is me, and this is our window looking out onto the back garden. It's not hard to take, let me put it that way, right? So we had our own bathroom. The bathroom was out here someplace. It's small, but it was modern. It was very nice. And you could see the desk and beds and that kind of stuff. So pretty much, it's kind of, it reminded me of dorm life in a way. It's a fancy dorm, but still a dorm, So it was a lot of fun, going back to college days, kind of. This is the long gallery in the manor. So the manor is a great house. It was built in 1835. Well, it took, part of it was built in 1835, and then they added on. But it's a great house, and it has all these fancy rooms where the great aristocrats lived. And you'll see it also has some not so great rooms. That's where the help lived, kind of like Downton Abbey, so those types of manor houses. So this is one of the fancy rooms. This is the long gallery. And we would have dinners here sometimes. We have class here, too. I'll show you a picture of the class I taught here. So very, very ornate, fancy stuff. The manor was built by a guy named Gregory. He was a rich, I'm not exactly sure how he got his money, but he was a rich aristocrat who was trying to become a lord, a noble. He never made it to nobleship, but he built this grand house as kind of, I guess, part of moving on up in society. So that's kind of how things worked back in those days. It was modeled after an older house, the Bergy House, which was built by one of Queen Elizabeth's advisors back in the 16th century, I suppose. So on the outside, as you saw that outside, it's very much like this more ancient house. So Gregory toured the country, basically, and picked little pieces of other great houses that he wanted to emulate. And this is a room that you might see something similar in other great manors in England. This is the Gold Room, as we called it. I think it was probably a music room at one time, but it's a smaller room. You can see also very ornate. I also taught here. Here's another side of the Gold Room. So it's an experience, you don't get to teach in these types of rooms very often. So it's kind of a fun experience. So I taught 3 classes there. I taught basic biology and environmental science and bioethics. Bioethics was in the Gold Room. Environmental science was in one of the less fancy rooms downstairs. So I don't have pictures of that, sorry. This is the Great Hall. This is you don't get a picture of the size of this really from this, but it's a very large room. We'd have dances and some events here as well, receptions, that kind of thing. There were no classes in this room. This is the conservatory. April worked in the conservatory. So I was teaching, and my wife was doing other jobs. They have the spouses doing other types of things. So some of them helped in the Bistro, which is kind of a little bar, coffee shop downstairs. Some of them worked in the conservatory and did some groundskeeping. April likes gardening, so this fit her interests. So spouses keep busy as well, doing other stuff. So you'll see that some of us had our significant others with us. This is the refectory. This is the dining hall, basically. After Gregory and his family lost the manor, because these things are very expensive to keep up, the Jesuits bought it. So this was a Jesuit, I guess, monastery, kind of, for a while. And so there are some remnants of the Jesuits in the manor still. And the refectory name comes from that time, I guess. It's kind of the dining hall for religious orders. And so they call it the refectory. You see, it's not so grand, but it served the purpose. So everybody ate here, 3 meals a day. We all ate together. So it's kind of a nice communal atmosphere. We get to know in terms of the visiting faculty, we got to know each other very well. Got to know some students, more or less. So that was a part of the attraction. This is the boutique. Again, April worked at the boutique a couple days a week, and so this is basically the kind of the bookstore. They sold shirts like this and other stuff at the boutique. And this is another faculty wife, Mrs. Davies, was with her husband Lloyd. So there were a lot of things going on in the manor. We had a lot of events that were organized as the semester went through. Of course, being in the fall semester, we got to celebrate Christmas. So we had this huge Christmas tree. This is the biggest tree I think I've seen indoors. It was like 22 feet tall, and you see the relative size next to a bunch of students. So this was taken when they decorated the tree. This is the principal, Gordon Kingsley, who's retiring after this year. So I got to be there his last year as principal of the place. Principal, that's what they call the dean or president or whatever over there is a principal. So a bunch of events. We had dances. So this is the Kylie dance. They had a band. You can't really see the band, but they tried to teach us various dances, and so this is our attempts at doing these kind of dances. It was kind of fun. I was sitting this one out. This was another type of dancer. These are the Morris dancers. I don't know if anybody's familiar with them. The name Morris comes from the Moorish dancers. It's an ancient tradition, I guess, in England. And they used to have swords, evidently. Now they carry little sticks instead. But they dance around, they clash their sticks, and it's kind of a folk dance type thing. So they had them in one time, and so they got people involved with that. They also brought cloggers along with them. So these guys were all from Nottingham, the Moorish dancers and the cloggers. So this is the bistro downstairs. You don't really get a feel for that either from this picture, but there's a little bar back here and a stage up here. So it's a nice little space. There were foosball tables and pool tables and darts and stuff like that down there too. So these are the cloggers. We had this is a big manor house, and so when people think of the manor house, you think of the game of Clue. So we organized a game of Clue in the manor. So they had various of us playing different parts. Like I was Colonel Green, I think, and there were various other people that played various parts, and you had to guess who was the murderer. Turns out she was the murderer. So this is Janice Lefalian, who is another faculty spouse. So anyway, that was fun. People went around to different rooms and got different clues. And it was interesting. You'll notice some TLU students scattered in here too, right? So they have in the fall, there's a day called Guy Fawkes Day, or oftentimes now just called Bonfire Night. So Guy Fawkes was a historical character who tried to blow up Parliament back in the 1600s. And they celebrate this by burning him in effigy every year. We didn't have an effigy or anything, but we had a big bonfire, Guy Fawkes Night bonfire. So you probably have seen the masks, the Guy Fawkes masks, the white masks with the mustache. That's Guy Fawkes, a famous traitor, I suppose, right? So that's kind of a fun event. It was quite cold that night. They had s'mores of a certain type. A lot of the foods are kind of different over there, so you kind of have to get used to things. But it was kind of like s'mores, at least, and hot chocolate and that kind of thing. So that's all in the manor. If you go down to the end of the driveway, which is a mile long, the manor is 100 rooms, and it's on 105 acres. So it's a big, big place, right? If you go down the driveway, you come to the end of the driveway, and this is at the end of the driveway. So this is the local pub. This is the Gregory. So it's kind of a nicer pub, really. Doesn't have really the traditional pub atmosphere. It's more of a restaurant. But it's very nice place. Very good food. So if you keep going down this road, you come to the canal. So there's a canal that connects Grantham with Nottingham. You see the Nottingham is, from this particular sign, is 30 miles or so. So the Grantham Canal is an old canal that they used to use to haul goods back and forth. It's closed now. It doesn't have any function in terms of hauling things, but it is still a nice place to walk or jog along. There's still like the towpath for the canal, because they used to have donkeys or horses pulling the canal barges. So the towpath is still in use. People fish out of the canal and that type of thing. So it's a nice little spot. You can jog along it. This is the canal path and the towpath and the canal. This is the bridge going to Denton, I think. Grantham itself is about 5 miles from Harlaxton. So this is the church in Grantham. This is St. Wolfram's Cathedral, and parts of it date from the Norman times, from 1100 or so. It has a very tall spire, the tallest in Lincolnshire, I think. So this is a very nice historic cathedral, worth the visit for sure. It has a chain library, kind of unusual. In the spire, they have books on chains, the old books that you can look at, I guess. We had a run. Close to the manor, there was another great house, a castle called Beaver Castle. It's not spelled like beaver, but call it Beaver Castle. And there's actually nobles living there still. So there's I think they're dukes. A duke and a duchess live in this castle. anyway, they organized a run at Beaver Castle. So this was a 5K, and this is me at the start. I didn't look this good at the finish, but I got my medal anyway, so I brought that along. They didn't give T-shirts. I was very disappointed. I thought, I'd get a T-shirt out of this, but no T-shirts. This is us at the end. This is a bunch of students. This is Owen, who is the sports coordinator, and this is Ian. He kind of is the accountant for the manor. He runs a lot of the books and things like that. So they were in much better shape than I was. And then the students, of course, I did finish ahead of a couple students, luckily. But again, this is another Christmas picture. This is some of the visiting faculty. You see Sarah, who is a psychologist. There's me and April. Mohsen Lockfillian is an engineer. He taught calculus as well. This is Lloyd and Libby Davies. Lloyd taught English courses. He taught a fantasy literature course and some other ones. And this is the nursing professor, Angie Wooten. So they do have nursing classes there. For their senior nurses, they go out and do some field stuff most of the time. So they're kind of a separate group, but there were quite a few of them from Evansville, right? So there were also some other faculty not pictured here. There was an education faculty from Western Kentucky, actually two of them. They split the semester. So Nielsen came at the beginning of the semester, taught half a semester there, and then Dusty came at the end of the semester and finished up. They're not pictured here, but they were from Western Kentucky, teaching education courses. And then there was also the astronomer physics guy who had his 3 kids with him. So Sarah and Nathan and their 3 kids were here. The kids all went to school at the local school. So every morning they would trudge down to the local Harlaxton elementary school. They picked up English accents while they were there, so they could speak the lingo by the time they left. So it was kind of funny, and they again fit in with the rest of us. They ate at the same refectory, all that type of thing. So very communal atmosphere. This is a representation of what the British faculty look like. They had a day where it was called British Pride Day, where people were encouraged to dress up as British people. So some of our students did this. These are 3 TLU students. I won't name them, but they look like the British faculty. This is a representation of Ed Bujak, who taught, all of these people taught in the British Studies course. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Ed Bujak, David Green, who kind of ran the course, he's the medievalist of the bunch, and Caroline McGinnis was the literature person, and then not pictured here is Graham Baker, who is the historian of science. He was interesting to talk to because we shared common interests in things like eugenics and things like that. So good group of English faculty there who taught this 6-credit course, British Studies. So everyone, it turns out, see, they told me they'd heckle me. So this 6-credit British Studies course everyone takes. And it was a great experience for me because I got to take it also. Every Monday and Wednesday at 8:30, we'd all go down into the long gallery there that I showed you. And every time they would have a little handout. So all these different handouts they would give you for today's lecture, So it was a chance for me to relive college days, and I didn't have to take any tests though, so that was good. We had a kind of like our student academic symposium. They had a similar thing at the Manor, so the honors students got to present some work, and so this is a picture of that presentation day. So we took various classes. Students took their normal load of classes, and I got to take a class and to teach some classes, right? So academics is pretty strong there. It's a good group of students, and so if you're interested, I would recommend it for all you students out there. This is me teaching in the gold room. This is the bioethics class. And you see the rooms are set up differently depending on the events, but this is the typical classroom setting. They had the typical projectors and PowerPoints and all that. Although in the long gallery, it was kind of a struggle sometimes getting the sound to work. I had to learn all the tricks of the soundboard because it was a big complex soundboard they had. But I finally got used to that. And so this is the basic biology class in the long gallery. This was the biggest class I taught. This was like 28 students. The biology class was a lab class. And so we had a lab, kind of. This is the lab. This lab doubles as the art studio. So in these cabinets, some of them are full of lab stuff, but some of them are full of art stuff too. So there's paper and drawing supplies and that type of thing down there. If you look on this side of the lab, this is what you see, it kind of goes around. It holds about 14 people or so, a dozen, 14 people. So we had a few labs in there, we tried to do what we could. We had a simulated blood typing lab and things like that in there, and that was kind of fun. We made use of that as much as we could. But the great thing about being there was that there's so much else around that we could kind of make up for the lack of lab space. So one time we took a walk around the woodland trail and collected plant material, and there's a good key, Dr. Levens, there's a good key online that we used to identify the plant material. It was very a nice little lab there. We did some other types of stuff, including going to the local church. This is the Harlaxton Church, the lot, right? And it's they have the traditional old graveyard there, still in use. And so we did the demographics of people by looking at their birth dates and death dates. We can do a demographic analysis of lifespans and things like that, right? So we did that as a lab. Here's another picture of the Harlaxton Church and the graveyard. And so that was another type of lab. And we also got to go to some places around Grantham, including London. So the first big trip that everyone goes on is the trip to London. So this is the first London trip. And during that trip, we got to take our biology class. Those who wanted to go went to Kew Gardens. The Royal Gardens at Kew is one of the premier gardens in the world, and we were able to see this as part of the biology tour. So this is the class. It was raining that day, of course. It's England after all. And so this is us at Kew Gardens. Kew Gardens in 2009 marked its 250th anniversary. Things are old in Great Britain. And so they are one of the storehouses of plant material, plant genetics. Kew Gardens, of course, has all sorts of specimens of plants. They had a kind of an interesting setup here. They had a Mad Hatter's Tea Party thing set up here. And so you see this long table. And on the table, they had examples of different types of plants that we would use in tea or baking or that type of thing. So, you see the tea plant and things like that. So it was an interesting exhibit they had set up for that. Another picture of one of the conservatories there. They had the nymphea, the water lilies. So Kew is a royal garden. Of course, if you're a royal garden, you should probably have a palace, right? So this is Kew Palace. This is in the Kew Gardens. They have this is an old palace. King George the Fifth, I think. Mad King George spent a lot of time here, and it's set up. The rooms are set up as they would have been in his time. So they have exhibits in here about that. Quite interesting. This is the garden in back. So this is the garden inside Kew Gardens, the palace garden, you might say. And this is another view of the palace garden from inside the palace. So while you're at London, you can do all sorts of things. This is the Tower of London. This is inside the White Tower. They have a setup where they have the armor of the kings. So these are ancient suits of armor, and you see they also armored their horses for these matches, these jousts and things like that. I suppose they took them into battle too. So that was Tower of London actually has 20 towers, and so it's quite an amazing place to visit. Ancient Norman castle. This is Prince Albert's monument. Queen Victoria really loved her husband, and when he died, she put up all sorts of monuments. This is a huge monument to Prince Albert, and this, of course, is Royal Albert Hall. You can see the scale of things. Here are people. This is another palace. This is Hampton Court. This is the earlier palace where Henry VIII and his people lived. It's very close to Kew Gardens, in fact. And this is one of the stops we made on the way out of London. On the same trip, we also stopped at Runnymede. So this is the monument to the Magna Carta. Oddly enough, there isn't much at Runnymede, right? For such a momentous event, you'd expect there to be maybe a gift shop or some touristy stuff. There isn't really much there, except for this monument. The monument was put up by Americans. You see the star up here. The American Bar Association actually put up this monument because the Magna Carta represents such a step forward in terms of legal rights. So this is the Magna Carta monument. Another piece of Americana in the United Kingdom is this American cemetery. So on another trip, a day trip really, from Grantham, we went to Cambridge. And this is the American Cemetery at Cambridge. So various places around Europe, there are cemeteries run by the American government memorializing the people who died in Europe during World Wars I and II. This is World War II. These were mostly Americans who died in the Battle of the Atlantic as trying to protect shipping lanes and things like that. So it was quite a nice stop, moving visit to the American Cemetery at Cambridge. We continued on to Cambridge, and of course, so I can tell people I was a professor at Cambridge now, truthfully. And so this is Cambridge. This is a street kind of off of the main drag, and the reason I included this picture is because of the Eagle Pub. The Eagle Pub is an old pub, as you see. It's been around for a while. And this was the place where Watson and Crick used to go drink and try to think about DNA. So I thought this was a place I had to go to. And so sure enough, we made it to the Eagle Pub. This is me inside the Eagle Pub. They brew an ale there called the DNA Ale in honor of Watson and Crick. So there's all sorts of good stuff you can see in England. This is King's College Chapel. So they call these things chapels. They're really huge cathedrals, of course, but very impressive cathedral. King's College is one of the colleges at Cambridge. So there's a bunch of them. Cambridge is the younger of the two universities. Oxford is a little bit older. And these colleges were at one time established by different organizations or towns or monasteries who would send people to Cambridge or Oxford. So there's a bunch of colleges within these larger universities. At Cambridge, there's the Sedgwick Museum. Sedgwick was a colleague of Darwin's, and much of the material, well, not much, but some of the material that Darwin brought back from his travel on the Beagle is at the Sedgwick Museum. So this is a bust of Darwin, of course, and representing the Beagle. Some of his notebooks are there. So you can see those, some of his specimens. This is me in front of a fossil that Sedgwick actually bought, not one of Darwin's, but so you see, get a feel for the museum. It's not a big museum, but it has a lot of interesting specimens and kind of historical. I think if I went back and was teaching this course again, I think I would have included the Museum of Natural History in London as well as part of the field trip lab activities, because I think that would have been very interesting as well. Lots of Darwin stuff is there as well. So closer to Grantham is a place called Woolsthorpe. This is the ancestral home, you might say, of Sir Isaac Newton. So Newton's family lived very close to Grantham, it turns out. And this was Woolsthorpe Manor. They were basically sheep people. They raised sheep. They still raise sheep. There's sheep in the field out here. You don't see them. But this was the manor house. Not a grand manor, but still, I guess at the time, this was pretty luxurious. And this was the famous apple tree. This is Newton's apple tree where he sat under and realized that gravity is everywhere, right? So, the apple tree had some damage, but it came back. So this is actually the original apple tree, they tell us, from the 1600s. So, did you guys take any apples from that? Yeah, okay. So. Grantham is in Lincolnshire. So one of the cities close to Grantham is Lincoln. And Lincoln was the home of Sir Joseph Banks, who was another famous botanist who traveled with James Cook, discovered a lot of the plant material in Australia. They grow Banks roses here, for instance, named after Sir Joseph Banks. So, this is actually in the cathedral at Lincoln. They have this monument to Sir Joseph Banks. He was an old Lincoln native. This is the Lincoln Cathedral, I think. Although all these cathedrals kind of run together, but I think this is the Lincoln Cathedral. Lincoln's a great city. It has a nice castle, a nice cathedral, a very steep hill to walk up to get to those things. It's pretty strenuous, but you could make it. This, I think, is the York Cathedral. York is another a town further north, established by the Romans, but also taken over by the Vikings in the Middle Ages. And so it was called Jorvik by the Vikings, and so that transmuted into York afterwards. York has one of the most extensive medieval walls in the country. I think the most extensive medieval walls remaining in the country. So you can walk almost all around the whole city on these medieval walls. And some of their foundations, again, date back to Roman times. This is an interesting piece of that wall because you see this guy up here. He's a representation, and he's throwing a boulder down on you. So if you're standing outside the wall, you're supposed to be scared by these guys that are going to throw boulders at you. Of course, if you go to England, you should go to Stonehenge. We made it to Stonehenge, ancient remnants near Bath. So it was very cold that day, windy and cold, and so you see us huddled together. But Stonehenge is quite an amazing site. You can't get too close to it, though. This is kind of one of the difficulties. It may look close, but it's really quite far away because these stones are huge. But you can get close to these stones. This is Avebury. It's kind of, let me see, it's about 10 miles away from Stonehenge, and it's actually the biggest stone circle. It is a huge circle surrounding this little town of Avebury. In fact, they built the town within the circle, kind of, so there's stones actually in the town, and people in the Middle Ages actually removed some of the stones or got rid of some of the stones, but there's still a lot remaining. And you can wander around these and get a feel for some of the size of these megalithic monuments from 4000 BC, something like that. So these are very ancient religious sites. They had some kind of religious significance, perhaps burial sites or things like that. This is, again, Mosin and Janice and my wife standing near one of the stones. Yes?
The previous picture?
Yes.
The stone, yeah, where that date back to?
About the same, like 4000 BC, something like that, for prehistoric times, yeah. People associate these with the Druids, but they weren't put up by Druids. The Druids were much later than these stones. These were ancient Britons, yeah. Other question? I see a hand. No, they're not natural, not at all. In fact, they were taken here from quite far away, and it's still, kind of an amazing feat that they had to transport these huge megaliths for miles. There's a river fairly close, and we think that they drifted them down the river to get them to this spot. But it's, yeah, they're in a kind of a ring, and there's several stages of Stonehenge. There's there's a smaller ring of stones within the big stones. So it was constructed in several stages over who knows how long, how many years. It dates from the time of the pyramids, you know, so people were doing these huge constructs in various places, yeah.
It's also like known as one of the biggest mysteries of the world of like how it got there. And one of
Yeah.
the reasons of why, when I was listening to the radio thing when I was there, was at certain different parts of the day, it kind of sort of tells the time and the moon phases. And so it was thought that maybe they put there for religious, like, just, I don't know, for religious belief of knowing what time it was, as well as when the moon was changing and stuff like that.
Right, so it's kind of a timekeeper for them also, kind of a clock, calendar type thing. You may know, even today, people gather there at the summer solstice and dance around, you know. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon, but Druids were much later. Anything else so far? Yeah, yes. You're not alone in these sites, yeah. There's all sorts of other tourists there, even in the middle of winter. No, it's yeah, it's really it's a great experience. This is the Lake District. So this is a picture from Bonus, town of Bonus on the lake. This is Lake Windermere. Very nice countryside, lots of hills. You can hike the hills. You can jump in the rivers, whatever you want to do. This is the actual town. You can take a boat ride. There's boat rides to the other towns on the lake. Beatrix Potter has a farm. The person who wrote Peter Rabbit and those other stories, her farm is across the lake. We visited that. So that was, it's a nice touristy place. So outside of England, we traveled also, and many students do as well. So this was Germany. So we went to Germany as independently, away from the group. This is Munster. This is a cathedral in Munster, Germany. This is the bigger of the cathedrals there. There's also a smaller one that has some interesting history. It has cages hanging from the spire where they used to put Lutherans. They used to hang Lutherans from the cages, so the heretics, you know. So little history of Munster. We went to Paris. This was actually part of the school trip. We took the Eurostar to Paris through the Channel, and so this is the view from the spire of Notre Dame. This is close to the gargoyle. It's nice because you see the gargoyles close up. When you have to go up the stairs, but it's worth it. And so this is the view of Paris, Montmartre out there. Again, kind of not great weather, but you know, you can live with that. This is Venice. So this is the Bridge of Sighs in Venice. After the term is over, students and faculty have the chance to go on another excursion to Italy. So there's a trip to Venice, Florence, and Rome that some of us went on. So this was during the Venice trip. Again, kind of chilly, but worth seeing. This is St. Mark's in Venice in the square, San Marcos Square. This is Florence. This is a picture of the Duomo, the dome part, the painted dome in the cathedral there, painted by all the grand masters of the Renaissance. See, there is a little bit of damage at various places, but it's held up pretty well. So this is Rome. Speaking of holding up well, these are the Roman aqueducts remaining there, pieces of them. This is the Trevi Fountain in Rome, Bellini work. The Colosseum, of course. No Christians were killed in the Colosseum. They were killed someplace else. These are mostly other types of criminals. This is Scotland. So my wife and I went to Europe about 10 days ahead of when we needed to be there because we wanted to do some other stuff. So this is a tour we took before we got to Harlaxton. And so this is Dornan Castle, a famous castle in Scotland. We went to the Isle of Skye and the Highlands of Scotland before we made it to Harlaxton. So you have these opportunities while you're there. You know, everything's pretty close, and so you can go all sorts of different places. This is Kilt Rock again in Scotland, a nice little waterfall. And of course, we were there at Christmas time. This is Rome, some of the lights of Rome in the Christmas season. So we got to see a lot of Christmas type stuff. We got to see some Christmas markets in London, in Florence, and in Rome. We saw some Christmas markets that were set up. So all in all, one of the highlight experiences of my life was this 4 months in Europe. A lot of fun. I'd certainly recommend it. I don't know if there's any questions I can answer at this point. Yes?
Did you see the Aurora Borealis?
No, you know, we thought we might see the Aurora Borealis because we are quite far north, but it never showed up there. They, in the newspapers, they had trips to Norway and places like that where they said you could see them. But I think it's kind of spotty. You know, with the sunspot activity these days, you know, it's kind of an active year, evidently, but we never saw the aurora. Of course, it was cloudy many nights as well, so that kind of maybe had something to do with it. But no, we never saw that. You know, it's kind of cloudy and cold a lot, but you know, you kind of get used to that. Yes.
You say y'all stayed in the manor?
Yes.
Was it more of a whole bunch of like a hallway with different rooms, or did you have to go through each room to get to the room you wanted?
No, yeah, it's a hallway with a bunch of different rooms coming off of it, yeah. The students, about half the students stay in the Carriage House, which is not the manor. So, so the Carriage House is a carriage house. It's kind of a few steps away from the manor, and so they had to go out in the cold every time to go to the refectory. But you know, so we faculty were privileged, kind of, but some of the students were in the carriage house. They had a nice fitness center there. They had like a temporary building that's been there for years, where they had the fitness center. It's pretty nice. Nice gym.
Charlie, you want to talk a little bit about the cost?
Yeah, sure, yeah. For the cost of the program, and it's a semester program, you can go for fall or spring. And down in the front are course equivalencies. The courses are already, for this program, for you, the courses are already listed out, and the TLU course equivalency is already figured out for you guys. So it's kind of a no-brainer figuring out what courses to take and how the courses will transfer back here. And the pricing for this academic year is just a little over $15,000, and that includes your tuition and your housing, and then your meals, which is kind of like meal plan B here, and plus the excursions that Dr. Jonas was talking about that are tied to the British Studies class. And it also includes that they pick you up at the airport and they take you back to the airport. And that cost, if you compare the TLU tuition, housing, and meals here at TLU, it comes out to be about $1,200 less to go on this program to Harlaxton. So that would cover your airfare, your round trip airfare. And so, yeah, last semester we had 9 students who participated. These 3 gals are part of that. And then the semester before, spring of 2013, we had 3 students, and Brittany was one of those students. And then for this fall, we have about 11 students in the application process for the fall. But yeah, as Dr. Jonas said, it's only about 150, 170 students on the program, and so you get some really individualized attention from your professors, both British and American professors.
So for most students, it wouldn't cost them any total cost to airfare
Right.
and additional expenses. You're going to spend a couple of pounds over there.
But the travel is made very, very easy, traveling via train, airfare for students especially. We've had students where they've been able to fly from London to Rome for the equivalent of $50 US, so really, really inexpensive.
Yeah, it's incredible some of the deals you can get on these airlines that you've never heard of. Ryanair and EasyJet and these types of places. They fly incredibly cheaply to all these places in Europe. It's amazing.
Plus, you're able to use, I mean, many of you guys have heard my spiel, but you are able to use all of your academic scholarships here. And then we also offer some study abroad scholarships for which you can apply. And then you pay everything through TLU, so you can pay in full at the beginning of the semester. You can go on a payment plan, whatever works. And, so it's made pretty easy and convenient for you all.
And generally, you're not going to lose progress.
Right.
The program is structured so that you're going to have courses available to you that would meet your requirements and transfer back over here. So most students would not lose progress. In fact, one of the real geniuses of that program is that it's one of the very few programs where engineers and nurses can actually do study abroad. In fact, it's probably the only one in the world where you can actually graduate on time if you're a nurse or an engineer.
Yeah, they're having a little bit of problem with the nurses because of the field experiences are not the same as you get here. They had some little conflict with that, but I mean, they certainly got to see the British the system for sure. So it was very interesting. And the three trips that are included in your tuition are the 2 London trips, one at the beginning, one at the end, and the Lincoln trip. And then the other trips are, if you want to go on the school organized trips, you can. Those are little extra charges, or you can travel on your own. A lot of students went on their own places, so it's pretty much up to you.
London is only about an hour and a half from the Manor House, and it's super easy to hop on the train. And then Edinburgh, Scotland is only about 3 hours by train.
Yeah. Getting north and south in England is quite easy. Getting east and west is a little harder. But yeah. So we have brochures, we have equivalencies.
Oh, I do.
Question?
I know that you've been studying the microbiology with brewing and stuff. Did you get to learn anything new over there just because they started a lot of the foundations of it? Did you get to explore with that?
Not so much. The beers over there were kind of more of the malty styles of beer, you know. I didn't find them all that great, but you know, and a lot of them were the cask ales, which were kind of warm, so that was different too. So.
Isn't America the only place that has cold beer?
No, Germany has cold beer. Most places have cold beer. They just have these casks thing. Yeah.
On the subject of alcohol there, I mean...
Yes, very important subject.
With the types of beer and the wine, what did you find more pleasing? The wines, from Italy, Paris and stuff, or the brewing in Germany and Scotland?
Well, I'm not a big wine guy, so I think the beers are more attractive to me. Yeah.
Okay, we would like to thank Dr. Jonas for coming and talking.
Pleasure.
Students at TLU engage in high-impact educational experiences that include civic engagement, aesthetic expression, critical thinking, and a focus on intercultural knowledge in a community that welcomes the interplay of faith and reason.